Are you ready to explore the hidden corners of our existence? At Paranormal M, we bring you real accounts of the paranormal that will leave you questioning everything. Subscribe and turn on notifications for an unforgettable journey. Story number 1. A weird laugh I heard in rural Minnesota. I used to live alone in northern rural Minnesota, nestled near the Canadian border, in a cozy little cabin. Being a seasonal employee, my days were filled with serenity and solitude. However, one winter night, an eerie incident occurred that left me questioning the tranquility of my surroundings. It was a particularly cold evening, and as I lay in bed, desperately seeking sleep, the clock struck 2 a.m., just as I was about to drift off into dreamland. A sound invaded the silence, shattering the peace that I had come to cherish. It was a laugh unlike any other I'd ever heard before. This wasn't an ordinary laugh. It was a haunting, malevolent chuckle straight out of a horror movie. The sinister laughter reverberated through the air, echoing off the walls of my humble abode. It seemed to stretch on for an eternity, lasting a whole minute before gradually fading away into the night. My heart raced and a shiver ran down my spine as I tried to make sense of what had just transpired. In a state of disbelief, I considered the possibility that the sound had emanated from my phone. I reached over, grabbed my device, and inspected it carefully. To my relief, or perhaps disappointment, it wasn't the source of the chilling laugh. The realization hit me like a gust of icy wind. I was certain that the sound had originated from outside. Momentarily, I entertained the idea that someone was playing a cruel prank on me. However, my logical mind quickly dismissed this notion. There was a raging snowstorm outside, and it was far too late for anyone from the company to venture out here, as they, resided about an hour away. That seems unlikely. Moreover, I had been living alone in this cabin for quite some time, and I didn't have any roommates. It seemed impossible for any other human presence to be responsible for this hair-raising laughter. Driven by curiosity and perhaps a touch of fear, I mustered the courage to rise from my bed. With trepidation, I made my way to the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of anything that could provide an explanation. I peered out into the darkness, straining my eyes to penetrate the swirling snowflakes. However, my efforts were in vain. There was nothing to be seen, no figure, no movement, just an expanse of desolate whiteness. As I stood there, gazing into the wintry abyss, a series of perplexing questions flooded my mind. How was it possible for a laugh to cut through the howling wind and blizzard? And why does it possess such a chilling and malevolent quality? The laugh's slow fade, lingering like a ghostly whisper, only intensified the sense of dread that had enveloped me. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the memory of that disturbing laughter refused to fade. It continued to haunt my thoughts and cast a shadow of unease over my peaceful existence. Eventually, the company I had worked for reached out to me, inquiring if I'd be interested in returning for another season. The mere mention of going back to that isolated, eerie environment sent shivers down my spine. In my response to the company's offer, I politely declined, though deep down, the reason for my refusal remained unspoken. It was that haunting laugh, the enigmatic sound that had pierced the tranquility of my nights. It had left an indelible mark on my psyche, forever altering my perception of solitude. So I bid farewell to this northern reach of Minnesota, where the borders blurred between civilization and untamed wilderness. I sought solace in the familiarity of my hometown, longing for the hustle and bustle that would drown out the echoes of that malevolent laugh. The decision to sever my ties with the secluded cabin was a choice made out of self-preservation, a quest to protect my fragile sense of peace. As I settled back into the rhythm of everyday life, surrounded by the comforting noise of the city, I couldn't help but wonder about the enigma that had disrupted my solitude. Was it a figment of my imagination, Born out of the isolation of harsh winter nights? Or did that laughter carry with it a hidden truth, a message from the unknown depths of the wilderness? While the answer to that question may forever elude me, one thing remains certain. The memory of that night and the bone-chilling laughter that pierced through the snowy landscape will forever remain etched in the deepest recesses of my mind. Story number 2. Had a coworker that passed away, and I saw his spirit and I dreamt about him. Back in 2016, I found myself employed at a local supermarket. The working grave shift alongside 3 coworkers and a supervisor. Among them was a certain individual named Kev, although we didn't quite connect on a personal level. Many times, our supervisor assigned me to assist Kev because he often fell behind on stocking the shelves. One day, our supervisor instructed me to lend a hand to Kev, so I made my way to his aisle. As I approached, our supervisor informed him of my presence, but Kev remained silent, simply continuing with his work. While I focused on restocking the shelves, I couldn't help but sense that Kev's gaze was fixed on me. Curiosity compelled me to turn my head, confirming my suspicion that he was indeed staring at me. In that brief moment, we locked eyes and engaged in an intense stare-down, as if trying to communicate something unspoken. I couldn't shake off the strange melancholy that emanated from Kev's gaze, and it seemed as though he harbored an unspoken message. Yet, he chose to remain silent. Resuming my work, I shifted my attention back to the products, leaving the enigmatic encounter behind. Some time later, as I walked into the store's warehouse, I caught sight of someone in the distance. It appeared to be Kev making his way toward me. Coincidentally, it was my time for break, so I exited the warehouse and I headed for the lunchroom. While enjoying my lunch break, I witnessed something inexplicable. The office door swung open on its own accord, despite no one being present. Initially, I brushed it off as a mere malfunction or possible damage, failing to attach any significance to the incident in the process. A day after that peculiar encounter, upon arriving at work, my supervisor wasted no time in informing me that Kev would no longer be working at the company. Intrigued, I couldn't help but inquire about the reason behind his sudden departure. My supervisor revealed that Kev's mother had called earlier that day to deliver the devastating news. Kev had tragically passed away the morning before. It was then that the pieces began to fit together, and a chilling realization washed over me. I had encountered the spirit of Kev, lingering within the confines of the supermarket, even after his untimely demise. But the story doesn't conclude there, for there was more to come. 2 weeks later, a dream invaded my slumber. In this vivid vision, I found myself standing within a grand 2-story home. Suddenly, a lady approached me, seemingly appearing out of thin air. Her voice resonated with an otherworldly quality as she urgently spoke. "Hurry up and say goodbye to him, because he's departing very soon." I was intrigued, so I complied with her request, and I ascended the stairs. As I entered the room on the upper floor, there stood Kev, his presence as real as in life. He approached me, and without hesitation, we embraced. The warmth of his hug enveloped me, and I reciprocated, holding on tightly. In that poignant moment, I managed to utter a heartfelt goodbye. Suddenly, my eyes fluttered open, and I found myself back in the realm of wakefulness, the remnants of the dream clinging to my consciousness. The enigmatic encounter with Kev, both in the waking world and in the realm of dreams, left an indelible mark on me. I couldn't help but ponder the mysteries that surrounds life and death, the thin veil that separates our physical existence from the ethereal realms. To this day, the memory of those haunting moments in the supermarket and the bittersweet farewell in the dream remains etched in my mind, a testament to the profound and enigmatic nature of the human experience. Story number 3. Thought I'd share one of my many paranormal encounters experienced within my family. Let me take you back to that eerie evening filled with inexplicable mystery and an unsettling encounter. As I reminisce about the events that unfolded in my adolescence, I can vividly recall the setting that surrounded my bedroom window, granting me a view into our serene and picturesque back garden. It was a haven of tranquility, a place where one could revel in the wonders of nature, and an escape from the complexities of the world. At the far end of the garden, tucked away amidst the blossoming foliage, stood our trusty storage room, or as we would affectionately call it, the shed. Its robust structure boasted a large window on the right side, while the door to the left flaunted an array of 9 small, humble little windows. Little did I know that on that fateful night these windows would become the gateway to an inexplicable enigma. It was during the twilight hours, as the sun's dying rays cast a golden hue upon the land, that I felt an inexplicable urge to gaze out of my bedroom window. Little did I know that this simple act would initiate a sequence of events that would forever leave an indelible mark. As I peered out into the garden, my eyes fixated upon the shed. It was then that I noticed an unmistakable figure inside, near the door, engrossed in the task of sorting through various items. My heart skipped a beat, for it was my sister, completely absorbed in her undertaking. Yet the sight that lay beyond the shed's window would shake me to my core. Gazing through that pane of glass, I beheld a dark silhouette, haunting in its presence. The figure stood there, motionless, its eyes fixated upon my sister with an intensity that sent shivers cascading down my spine. Despite the dwindling light, the details of this ethereal being were eerily distinct. It was a woman, gaunt and skeletal, her lustrous hair cascading just below her shoulders. She stood, an apparition frozen in time, unblinking, unwavering. In that moment, my mind raced to rationalize what I had witnessed. The only thin, slender woman in her household was my beloved aunt. And in my naivety, I concluded that it must have been her. Without dwelling on the matter much further, I casually descended the stairs, joining the occupants of our home. Someone whose identity eludes me posed the question of my aunt's whereabouts, and with an air of nonchalance I replied, "Oh, she's with Joe in the shed." Little did I know the depth of the mystery that awaited. To my astonishment, my aunt, as if summoned by the conversation, emerged from her room, her presence contradicting my previous assumption. Baffled, I approached her, desperately seeking an explanation. "Were you with my sister in the shed?" I inquired, to which she responded with a resolute no. She clarified that she had been confined to her room throughout the duration of the entire evening. Confusion washed over me, mingled with a sense of trepidation. If it wasn't my aunt, then who or what had I witnessed through that fateful window? With my curiosity aflame, I awaited my sister's return to the safety of our house. Upon her arrival, I wasted no time in interrogating her, eager to discern the truth that lay hidden in the shadows. Her response struck a chord of eerie resonance within me, as she confirmed that she had been alone in the shed. Unaccompanied by any other living soul, the mystery deepened, leaving us pondering the identity and purpose of the enigmatic figure we had all unwittingly encountered. As time wore on, this inexplicable occurrence became a recurring motif in our lives. Both my sister and my mother would go on to experience their own unsettling encounters with this ethereal woman on separate occasions. It was only recently, as fate would have it, that our paths converged, and we shared our respective tales of the enigmatic figure that had haunted us for years. To our astonishment, we discovered that the descriptions we each provided matched with uncanny precision. The significance of that peculiar event in 2015, when I was but a 14-year-old adolescent, began to unravel its enigma in the tapestry of our shared experiences. It became a testament to the inexplicable, a testament to the notion that there exists realms beyond our comprehension, where the boundaries of reality and the supernatural intertwine. Even now, as the years have passed, the memory of that skinny, spectral woman lingers within the recesses of our minds. It serves as a constant reminder that the world we inhabit is replete with enigmas waiting to be unraveled, with mysteries eager to be deciphered. As we continue our journey through life, we remain forever humbled by the inexplicable, forever captivated by the unknown, and forever haunted by the woman we glimpsed through that haunting window, a specter that defies explanation. Story number 4. Grandma woke out of a coma speaking a strange language. My grandmother and I shared a bond that was unique, characterized by a deep connection that transcended physical displays of affection. She was what some might call a stiff upper lip Irish English. And when my parents were going through a tumultuous divorce, she graciously took me in. I often joke that she and my pop rescued me from the chaos, as my parents were too consumed by their own battles to notice my struggles. Throughout my college years, I made a conscious decision to attend a school near my grandmother. Unfortunately, the details of what led her to be hospitalized and slip into a coma have escaped my memory. However, I vividly remember the sight of her lying there, so small and vulnerable in that massive bed, surrounded by an assortment of machines. It was unusual to see her hooked up to so many devices. She had always been averse to excessive medical intervention. I believe she had only a breathing mask for oxygen, in addition to the standard monitoring equipment for blood rate and heart pressure. I remained faithfully by her side for over 2 weeks, forsaking all other obligations. I even summoned the courage to contact my literary professor, beseeching for an extension to present my final report. The paper was completed, but I felt emotionally drained, incapable of standing before an audience without succumbing to tears or exhaustion. My professor granted me the option to either present or accept a failing grade. With high honors and an imminent graduation in sight, I mustered the strength to deliver the presentation, although it was far from my best work. As soon as I finished, I rushed back to the hospital and resumed my position by her bedside, where she remained in the intensive care unit throughout her stay. On one particular day, while holding her delicate hand and pouring my heart out, I observed her head slowly turning in my direction. Instead of the expected joy or confusion upon awakening, her expression transformed into one of absolute anger and possibly even hatred. I had never witnessed her eyes shift in such a manner, nor had I ever heard her voice resonate with such furious intensity. The shock of the situation left me momentarily paralyzed, questioning whether my senses were deceiving me. I strained to comprehend the inexplicable gibberish that emanated from her. Yet, it possessed a peculiar semblance of organization. Despite the language being entirely foreign to me, I detected an unwavering gaze fixed upon me as she continued screaming. Regrettably, in my state of bewilderment, I failed to document the particular sound that she produced. Still in a daze, I stumbled out of the room, my expression somewhat smug, thinking, "See, she did come out of the coma." Approaching the nurse's station, I murmured softly. My grandmother woke up. The two nurses exchanged bewildered glances before hastily responding. Panic ensued as buttons were frantically pressed, codes were urgently announced, and I found myself forcefully escorted away from the room. The curtain was abruptly drawn, shielding my view from the ensuing commotion. Once the chaos subsided, I mustered the courage to inquire about the cause of my grandmother's rage and the content of her vehement tirade. The doctor's response only added to the mystery. Apparently, Such outbursts were occasionally observed when individuals emerged from comatose states, yet the medical community remained uncertain of their origins. The following day, my grandmother awoke, her face beaming with a warm smile as she eagerly grasped my hand. "I heard you the whole time. Thank you for staying with me," she expressed gratefully. Contemplating everything I now understand about the vastness of the universe, I'm compelled to pose a thought-provoking question to all who may read, or in this case, hear this. Have any of you experienced anything similar, or known someone who has? What do you think could have triggered my grandmother's inexplicable anger during that moment of awakening? The enigmatic nature of her outburst continues to linger in my thoughts, urging me to explore the depths of human consciousness and the intricacies of my own mind. Story number 5. Hat Man, I Have a Theory. Throughout my life, I've constantly found myself utterly bewildered by the perplexing presence of what has come to be known as the enigmatic Hat Man. This mysterious figure clad in a hat and coat, reminiscent of the 20th century, would occasionally materialize before my very eyes, his appearance sometimes obscured by an impenetrable darkness. Last night, while engrossed in the hazy depths of some television program whose title eludes me, there was a passing mention of the CIA and FBI. It was during this fleeting moment of casual dialogue that a sudden realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. Could it be that this elusive Hat Man is in fact an integral part of a clandestine government experiment involving the manipulation of time and astral realms? Perhaps he is a time traveler, effortlessly traversing the aeons, or an astral traveler capable of transcending physical confines and journeying to any realm his ethereal soul desires. Intriguingly enough, there is a lingering knowledge that the powers that be did engage in perplexing endeavors during the mid-20th century, particularly between the 1950s and 70s. I vaguely recall snippets of information alluding to such covert operations conducted on innocent children, though the specific names of the program and the harrowing events that unfolded within its confines elude me. Curiously, popular television series such as Stranger Things and Ghost Whisperer have seemed to draw an inspiration from these murky historical episodes, incorporating elements thereof into their enthralling narratives. Moreover, the veracity of the Hat Man's existence has been irrefutably confirmed by the unwavering witness accounts of my own children. Their genuine encounters with this spectral being lend an indisputable credence to this reality. Yet, it is the perplexing choice of attire, the distinctly anachronistic 20th century clothing comprising his ensemble, that has persistently perplexed and occupied my thoughts. It serves as an unmistakable symbol, an undeniable clue to unravel the enigma surrounding his presence. This sartorial choice undoubtedly signifies a specific era, effectively evoking a deep-seated curiosity at the same time, urging me to scrutinize his origin and his purpose. Alas, the answers to these profoundly perplexing questions continue to elude my grasp, their elusive nature only deepening the enigma that shrouds the Hat Man. For now, I'm left to ponder the implications of this peculiar choice of temporal attire, while my mind wanders through the vast corridors of speculation and wonder. The enigmatic Hat Man, draped in his resolute silence, stands as a symbol of the great unknown, an ethereal enigma that beckons further exploration into the realms of time and space, and the intricacies of the human soul. Story number 6. Possible experience with something more than my mind can fathom. Now let me recount the events of last night, starting with the peculiar incident a couple of nights ago. I was lying in bed, accompanied by my dog, who is usually calm and never barks. To my surprise, he suddenly stood up and fixated his gaze on my doorway, letting out a series of loud barks. I found it highly unusual and speculated that perhaps he had heard a family member walking downstairs, or some other innocuous sound. Fast forward to last night, and I found myself ensnared in a perplexing dream. In this dream, I was seemingly asleep in my bed, but periodically I would jolt awake. Each time I regained consciousness, I found myself capable of surveying my surroundings, observing every detail in the room. I could see my faithful dog lying beside me, yet an unsettling realization dawned upon me. I was unable to move. It was as if an invisible force held me captive, rendering me immobile. Undeterred, I drifted back into sleep, however. The dream continued its enigmatic course, and once again I found myself seemingly asleep in my bed, only to awaken with a renewed determination. This time, as I roused from sleep, I made an attempt to retrieve my phone, only to discover that my attempts were in vain. My physical faculties seemed to have abandoned me. It felt as though an immense weight, akin to 1,000 pounds, burdened my chest. In that disconcerting moment, I couldn't help but acknowledge that something peculiar and unprecedented was transpiring. My mind delved into the realm of the inexplicable, questioning the boundaries of belief itself. The notion of the extraordinary crept into my consciousness, a phenomenon I had never previously entertained, let alone experienced. As the night wore on, I once again succumbed to the realm of dreams. In this iteration of the dream, I found myself back in my bed, rousing from slumber yet again. However, this time I mustered the courage to defy the invisible restraints that confined me. Although I sensed an unseen presence weighing me down, I pressed on, determined to escape the clutches of this mysterious force. I maneuvered my way to the edge of the bed, inch by inch crawling alongside it. But as I reached the precipice, a chilling sensation enveloped my neck, a vice-like grip that tightened relentlessly, constricting my airflow. My vision dimmed progressively, and I could not help but acknowledge the impending doom creeping closer. In those harrowing moments, as my breath grew scarce, I grappled with the realization that my life teetered on the edge. I succumbed to the abyss, my consciousness relinquished, and darkness descended. When I regained consciousness, I found myself back in the safety of my bed, yet the unnerving events of the night had left an indelible mark on my psyche. It was then that the chilling realization struck me. I was not alone in that room. The presence I had felt, the inexplicable force that tormented me, lingered still. I resolved not to venture back into the realm of slumber, fearing a repetition of the terror I had experienced. With vigilant eyes, I guarded my surroundings for the remainder of the night, unyielding in my resolve. Subsequently, I confided in my father about the disturbing dream that had unfolded. Tentatively, he probed me, questioning whether I believed an entity had manifested within the room. Reluctant to be deemed insane, I initially hesitated to admit the truth, but the weight of my experiences compelled me to disclose my burgeoning belief in the presence of something paranormal. To my surprise, my father shared an anecdote and relayed to me by one of his employees, which bore striking similarities to my own encounter. You see, this employee and his wife had experienced the disconcerting sensation of an otherworldly presence while they slept, accompanied by a heavy pressure that bore down upon them. Their distress was so profound that they ultimately chose to vacate their residence altogether, never to return or venture near it ever again. While I had encountered vivid dreams in the past, this occurrence felt markedly distinct. The level of detail and the intensity of the experience blurred the boundaries between reality and the realm of dreams. Doubts began to assail my mind, leaving me questioning whether those awakenings within my dream were in fact genuine awakenings. A lingering sense of bewilderment and unease pervaded my being, pushing the boundaries of my sanity. The aftermath of that fateful night left me gripped with genuine fear. The mere thought of sleeping in the same room tonight fills me with trepidation, for I dread the possibility of reliving the horrors I had endured. Contemplating the course of action, I find myself mulling over the idea of abandoning my current abode entirely. So profoundly has this experience impacted my life. The very fabric of my existence has been shaken, and I yearn for respite from the torment that has unsettled me to my core. Story number 7. Ouija board, unanswered and unspoken question without my touch. Looking for insight. This extraordinary incident occurred during my younger days, approximately 14 years ago. Reflecting on my adolescence, I vividly remember finding myself at the residence of my dear friend, who happened to be part of a remarkable Wiccan family. These extraordinary individuals, including my friend's 2 sisters and their wise mother, regularly engaged in the mystical practice of communing with spirits through the enigmatic Ouija board. Curiosity piqued, I agreed to spend the night at their bewitching abode, unknowingly embarking on an unforgettable journey. That fateful evening, as the moon cast an ethereal glow upon us, my companions broached the subject of employing the enigmatic Ouija board for our shared amusement. Initially, I remained skeptical, harboring doubts in my mind. Nevertheless, captivated by the allure of the unknown, I mustered the courage to partake in this enigmatic endeavor. Gathering around the Ouija board, we gingerly placed our fingers on the planchette, ready to delve into the enigmatic realms beyond. A sense of trepidation mingled with anticipation coursed through my veins as we initiated our otherworldly rendezvous. Greeting the spirits, we commenced our dialogue, venturing into uncharted territories of the supernatural. Gradually, the planchette began to move, guided by an invisible force. A sense of wonderment washed over me as I watched the words unfold before my eyes. The name Benny materialized on the board, leaving me dumbfounded. You see, a mere month prior to this extraordinary encounter, my family had bid farewell to a cherished figure in our lives, my mother's dearest friend, and an individual my sisters and I regarded as an aunt, Benny. Her untimely demise from the clutches of cancer had left an indelible void within our hearts. The mention of her name sent shivers down my spine, igniting an inexplicable sense of connection and intrigue. As the session progressed, a mixture of awe and fear coursed through my being, for the Ouija board began to unveil secrets that transcended the boundaries of rational comprehension. Lost in the mists of time, some details have faded from my memory, but one moment remains etched in my mind, the moment I daringly withdrew my hand from the planchette, embarking on an experiment of the mind. Deep within my thoughts, I silently posed a question. What is my middle sister's middle name? And to my bewilderment, the board spelled out K-I-P, Kip. The significance of this revelation cannot be understated. I had not uttered a single syllable aloud, nor did my friends possess any knowledge of my sister's middle name, as we had yet to cross paths. So at this juncture, a profound unease settled within me, shaking the very foundations of my skepticism. The inexplicable messages transmitted through the board defied the confines of logic and plunged me headlong into an enigmatic abyss. With trepidation intensifying, we pressed on, determined to quell the lingering doubts that hung in the air. Seeking a final message from the ethereal entity, we posed the question, "Do you have any parting words before we conclude?" The planchette hesitated momentarily before gliding across the board, spelling out 3 simple words that pierced through the veil of uncertainty. "Tell Mom hi." The sheer gravity of it sent a chill response cascading down my spine. It was as if an unseen force had pierced the veil of reality, transcending the boundaries of the physical realm to offer a message from beyond. To this day, recounting this experience elicits bewildered gazes from those who I share it with, as if they question the very fabric of my sanity. Yet, I can attest with utmost certainty that this inexplicable encounter transpired, and it was an experience that shook me to the core. In the aftermath of this remarkable escapade, my perception of the world underwent a profound shift. The boundaries of the tangible and intangible became blurred as I grappled with the notion that forces beyond our comprehension may exist. The skepticism that once governed my beliefs was irrevocably shattered, replaced by an insatiable curiosity and a newfound respect for the mysteries of the unseen. As the years passed, I delved deeper into the realm of spirituality and the arcane, seeking answers to the questions that continue to linger within my soul. Though I may never fully grasp the intricacies of that mystical encounter from my youth, its impact remains etched upon the tapestry of my being. It serves as a constant reminder that our existence is far more enigmatic than we dare to comprehend, and that the boundaries of our world extend far beyond the realm of the visible and the tangible. And so, the tale of that haunting night when I stood on the precipice of the unknown continues to be retold, each telling lengthening its thread and further solidifying its place in my personal chronicle. It is a story that will forever carry with me, an enduring testament to the depths of the inexplicable, and a testament to the mysterious forces that lie beyond the veil of our understanding. Story number 8. That evil entity wanted me dead. It was a time of great upheaval in my life when my parents, in their relentless concern for my well-being, managed to convince, or rather force me, to relocate to a different town and attend a new university. Their worries primarily stemmed from my toxic relationship with my boyfriend at the time, which they believed was detrimental to my emotional and mental health. Reluctantly, I acquiesced to their persuasions, bidding farewell to the familiar and embarking on a journey into the unknown. Accompanied by my mother, I found myself tirelessly scouring the town for a suitable apartment or room to rent, hoping to secure a safe haven in this unfamiliar environment. For 2 arduous weeks, we tirelessly explored every nook and cranny of the town, nearly succumbing to despair in our quest. However, just as hope was dwindling, fate intervened. While we aimlessly wandered through the streets, my mother's eyes fell upon an elderly woman affixing a sign to the front of a door. It boldly proclaimed, "For rental." Intrigued, we hastened toward her, unaware of the profound impact this encounter would have on our lives. The old lady, as it turned out, was the owner of the place, and she graciously extended an invitation for us to explore the house. As we crossed the threshold into the dwelling, an inexplicable unease settled upon me, an unsettling aura permeating the air. Gently leaning toward my mother, I whispered my trepidation, likening the place to that of a witch's house. Indeed, it was the first thought that it did invade my mind, and an instinctual aversion grew within me, nourished by an indescribable sense of dread. During our conversation with the old lady, we learned that a young couple had resided within those walls for several years. Tragically, their stay came to an abrupt end due to the untimely demise of the girl's father, which compelled them to vacate the premises urgently. Consequently, remnants of their life together lingered within, their possessions still occupying the space as they hastily relocated on the very day my mother engaged the owner in conversation. It was a whirlwind of circumstances and a serendipitous alignment of our needs and their departure. In a matter of mere days, I found myself settling into my new house, acclimating to the peculiarities of it. Its construction possessed an awkwardness that mirrored my own unease and an incessant fear, crept into my being. To counteract the eerie ambiance, I resorted to leaving the lights on throughout the night, a futile attempt to banish the encroaching darkness that seemed to seep through the cracks of this peculiar dwelling. The house itself boasted a long, winding staircase leading to a narrow hallway. On either side, doors beckoned one into the kitchen and bedroom, respectively, while a third granted access to the bathroom, nestled in the middle of the passageway. As for the small attic perched atop the bathroom ceiling, I hesitated to even glance toward it, hidden from view save for some rusty remnants peering through the cracks. It resembled a tiny storage space, seemingly accessible to those brave enough to venture inside. Needless to say, I never dared to tread into that mysterious attic. On the first night, I made the ill-fated decision to leave my bedroom door ajar, unknowingly inviting an onslaught of horrors into my life. In the realm of dreams, I traversed the dimly lit hallway by the sight of all 3 doors wide open, their darkness beckoning me with sinister intent. As I passed the bathroom door, a ghastly apparition confronted me, a pair of piercing, luminous yellow eyes fixated upon my trembling form. Overwhelmed by terror, I raced back to the bedroom, hurling myself onto the bed, only to be ensnared by an ethereal figure that tightly gripped my neck, suffocating me with an unyielding grasp. Desperately, I struggled to awake from this nightmare. As I consciously reclaimed me, I found myself coughing and grasping for air, my neck throbbing as though I had endured a real-life strangulation. Uncertainty plagued me, for I questioned whether I had indeed been dreaming, or had I crossed a blurred threshold into a realm where reality and nightmares converged, the spectral eyes lingering even after the figure had dissipated. With a newfound resolve, I promptly shut and locked the door, immersing the room in the sanctuary of light. Seeking solace beneath the refuge of a blanket, prayers flowed from my trembling lips as I surrendered myself to an uneasy slumber, grappling with the disconcerting notion that perhaps this was no mere dream, but an encounter with forces beyond our mortal realm. Throughout my life, I possessed the uncanny ability to distinguish between dreams and reality, a heightened awareness that accompanied both pleasant and dreadful nocturnal visions. Yet at that moment, an insidious doubt emerged, casting its shadow over my fragile grasp on the distinction between the 2 realms. Weeks turned into months, and gradually, I grew accustomed to the nocturnal terrors that plagued me. My relentless studies became a welcome distraction, consuming my waking hours and providing a semblance of stability amidst the ever-present unease. It was during this period that a fellow student, drawn to my presence, approached me after a lecture, mustering the courage to ask for a date. Intrigued, I accepted, and what initially began as a defiant act to flaunt my newfound freedom from the clutches of my toxic ex-boyfriend soon took on a turn towards intimacy. Regrettably, I manipulated this connection to spite my former flame, reveling in the twisted satisfaction of revenge. Consequently, after our second encounter, I abruptly severed the blossoming bond, casting aside this unwitting accomplice in my quest for emotional vindication. And then it happened, on that fateful night as I surrendered myself to sleep, unsuspecting and vulnerable. Awakened abruptly, I found myself immersed in a flurry of sensations, countless phantom hands caressing every inch of my quivering form. A voice, low and ominous, reverberated through the darkness, chilling me to my very core. Seemingly materializing out of thin air, an insidious figure enveloped me in its unholy embrace, emanating a malevolence that set my blood ablaze with anger. In the depths of my soul, a fierce determination took hold, an unyielding declaration that this would be the final straw, the ultimate confrontation with an actual demon, audacious enough to possess my very being. In a defiant roar, I demanded answers. My voice pierced through the suffocating silence. "What is your name? Who are you?" I implored, only to receive an unintelligible response in a twisted demonic tongue that clawed at my sanity. As swiftly as it had materialized, the figure dissipated into the abyss, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. Simultaneously, my television flickered to life, displaying a program previously unbeknownst to me. A young girl bound to a chair within a dimly lit room, caught in the precarious dance between nefarious and virtuous forces. A cryptic ultimatum hung in the air, uttered by one of the characters. "You have to choose. Are you on the good side or the bad side?" Abruptly, the television screen plunged into darkness once more, leaving me disoriented and shaken to the core. Fueled by the harrowing experience, I reached out to a trusted friend, dialed the numbers despite the late hour, and recounted the events that had unfolded. Their shock and concern mirrored my own, offering a semblance of solace in a world teetering on the edge of inexplicable forces. Somehow I managed to find slumber after that, my friend's unwavering presence lending a comforting aura that assuaged my restless mind. Thus, I continued to inhabit that peculiar house, enduring its enigmatic anomalies for nearly 4 arduous years. Nightmares and midnight anxieties became an unwelcome companion, leading me to keep the doors locked and the lights ablaze in a futile attempt to banish the encroaching shadows. The reflection in the mirror twisted and contorted, mirroring my own spiraling descent into depression and insanity. In the depths of despair, I even contemplated self-inflicted harm, seeking solace in the cold embrace of a bathtub, convinced that this torment was insurmountable. Yet, a glimmer of hope emerged from the depths of my despair. Through perseverance and a stroke of fortune, I managed to extricate myself from the clutches of my toxic ex-boyfriend and found solace in the arms of a new partner. Their presence provided a shield, a respite from the oppressive energies that plagued the house. Nights passed serenely as my newfound love sought refuge within those walls, bringing a sense of security and protection, shielding me from the intangible specters that once haunted me in my every waking moment. But as fate would have it, my newfound source of strength departed to pursue opportunities abroad, leaving me alone once more within the confines of that enigmatic abode. And that's when the cat appeared, an ethereal white feline, its gaze seemingly imbued with wisdom, boasting one emerald eye and another sapphire blue. It would perch upon the tree adjacent to my window, skillfully maneuvering its way into my sanctuary whenever I had inadvertently left the window ajar. Curiously, this otherworldly visitor did not provoke the expected paranormal disturbances. Though the circumstances struck me as peculiar, I found solace in its presence, as if the cat itself held the key to dispelling the inexplicable unease that had plagued me for far too long. Alone in the silence of the night, I no longer felt the weight of malevolent energies bearing down upon me, finding solace in the presence of this mysterious feline companion. During a visit from my parents, I confided in my father about this enigmatic cat that had graced my life. His reaction was one of deep concern and intrigue, as he immediately embarked on a quest to uncover the truth behind this ethereal creature. Strangely enough, my father, despite our close bond, chose to keep me in the dark regarding his findings, a veil of secrecy that piqued my curiosity and ignited suspicions of his own encounters with the supernatural. While he remained tight-lipped, I couldn't help but surmise that he, too, had traversed the shadowy realms of the inexplicable, yet chose to shield me from the haunting realities that he had witnessed. As time wore on, life seemed to regain a semblance of normalcy. It became apparent that the energy within the house thrived on my depression and anxiety, its potency gradually diminishing as I mustered the strength to rebuild my shattered self. With each passing day, as I rose above the ashes of my past, the entity grew weaker, its influence waning in the face of my newfound resilience. Yet I couldn't deny the lingering question that haunted my thoughts. Had I truly conquered the malevolent forces that once held sway over my life, or was this merely a respite, a deceptive calm before the storm? Now, as I recount my turbulent journey within the confounding house, find myself standing at a crossroads. The mysteries remained unsolved. The supernatural forces that held me captive continued to elude comprehension. It is in this precarious state, teetering between the realm of reality and the supernatural, that I stand on the precipice of an uncertain future. The memories and encounters, both harrowing and illuminating, will forever be etched within the fabric of my being, a testament to the indomitable spirit that carried me through the darkest of nights. And so, with trepidation and a newfound resilience, I brace myself for what lies ahead, a life that will forever be intertwined with the enigmatic and the inexplicable as I continue to navigate the intricate dance between the mortal and the ethereal, forever haunted by the memories of the house that held secrets beyond my comprehension. Story number 9. Previous Encounters, Good and Evil. From my earliest years as a child, I have been fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, enough to have had a series of experiences that have shaped my perception of the world. These encounters, though sporadic and unpredictable, have left an indelible mark on my memory, and I feel compelled to share them with you. However, I must warn you that they don't really follow a linear chronology, so I'm going to recount them as they come to mind. The first remarkable incident occurred when I was approximately 5 years old. It was a moment that remained etched in my consciousness to this day. I was standing alongside my mother when I informed her that I could hear a voice coming from the radio. This voice, which identified itself as the Holy Spirit, possessed a depth and authority that was awe-inspiring. Yet, despite its power, it emanated an overwhelming and incomprehensibly profound love that defied description. About a year later, I had the privilege of hearing the voice of my guardian angel, who introduced himself as Gabriel. Although he could not manifest himself in a visible form, he assured me that he would always be by my side. What struck me most about his voice was its peculiar combination of masculinity and high pitch, bordering on the feminine quality. It was a unique blend that added an air of mystery to our encounters. The third experience I wish to recount was another gift bestowed upon me by the Holy Spirit. This time, however, it took a completely different form from which I had previously encountered. It transpired during a school mass when I was in 8th grade. As we recited the Lord's Prayer, I felt an extraordinary sensation, a warmth, a lightness, and softness, as if a dove were unfurling its wings within my chest. This inexplicable feeling persisted for nearly half an hour after the prayer had concluded, and I desperately wished it to remain forever, for I had never before experienced such a profound and encompassing peace. I must emphasize that throughout all of these encounters, I never experienced fear. On the contrary, they exuded an aura of utmost goodness. However, the next incident I wish to share marked the first time I felt a sense of terror during such an encounter. During my 6th grade years, I would often find myself being the first to arrive home after school, leaving me alone for a couple of hours. At that time, I had a pet rabbit, and its cage was situated on a small hutch along my TV, positioned against the door sidewall. As a matter of privacy, I always kept my bedroom door closed. One particular day, while sitting on my bed and watching TV, my rabbit suddenly went into a frenzy inside of its cage. Curiously, I observed my doorknob slowly turning, much slower than usual. After completing a full rotation, the latch disengaged, and the door swung open. Unnaturally, but not violently. To my astonishment, I beheld a yellowish, sparkly mist hovering in the doorway. Acting instinctively, I grabbed the rabbit's cage by its handle and bolted out of the house as fast as I could. It took my mother approximately 20 minutes to return home, and only then did I feel safe enough to re-enter. That incident was a singular occurrence, and I have never encountered anything of the nature since. Fast forward to the year 1995, when I was living with my father in a condominium that would be my home for over 2 decades. It was within these walls that the majority of the paranormal phenomena I experienced took place. The first encounter in this dwelling was quite pleasant. One evening, as I was idling away in my room, I glanced at the strip of wood on the hinge side of the door. There I witnessed an awe-inspiring sight. A brilliant white ball of light, approximately the size of a baseball, hovering in midair. I blinked several times to ensure it wasn't a mere illusion, and to my amazement, it persisted, despite the presence of ambient light seeping in from the hallway above and below the ball. Its whiteness was so pure that the hallway illumination appeared yellow by comparison. Moreover, gazing upon this intense brightness did not cause any discomfort. It was as if the light itself was gentle and inviting. The ball of light remained motionless for a few minutes before gradually ascending a couple of inches and then vanishing at an astonishing speed, ascending upwards. Following its departure, my room became suffused with a sense of lightness and tranquility that I loathed to see dissipate. For the subsequent 6 years or so, nothing extraordinary occurred. However, around 2002, the paranormal activity resumed. On several occasions, as I concluded my prayers before sleep, I had the distinct sensation of being visited by 3 different spirits. Although these spirits did not reveal themselves in a visible form, I could discern their unique essences. The first spirit exuded warmth, the second emanated a pleasant energy, while the third possessed an aura of coldness. It always felt as if the first 2 were engaged in a constant battle, attempting to ward off the third, though their efforts proved futile. Not only was this third spirit chilling, but its presence alone evoked an overwhelming sense of dread. This unsettling period persisted for several months before gradually subsiding, after which another 2 or 3 years passed without any unusual occurrences. However, the subsequent phase of heightened activity was by far the most frightening. In my quest for a peaceful night's rest, I'd installed a blackout curtain over my bedroom window. Consequently, the room became enveloped in darkness at night, barely penetrated even during daylight hours too. It was during this period that I had encountered with what can only be described as demonic entities. One particular entity appeared before me on 3 separate occasions, each time revealing itself in its full form. The darkness of my room paled in comparison to the inky blackness that shrouded this entity. Its physical manifestation, though not well defined, resembled a flickering flame, albeit darker than the deepest abyss. Even the undulating top of its head seemed to mimic the movements of a dancing flame, but it was the entity's eyes that seared themselves into my memory with an indelible intensity. Bright, glowing, red cherry orbs. I could discern its mouth as well, black and ominously menacing, with sharp teeth that defied the imagination. Curiously, its mouth appeared closed, and yet these razor-sharp teeth were clearly visible on the outside. The fear I experienced during these encounters remains unparalleled to this day. I should also note that this malevolent entity would stand in front of my closet door, a space that had always filled me with unease. It's important to mention that I had no qualms about using the actual closet. It was the area in front of it that provoked an unsettling sensation. Consequently, I kept the closet door closed at all times, regardless of this underlying sense of disquietude. The first 2 encounters with this entity were relatively uneventful, though its presence alone was enough to provoke fear. However, the third and final encounter was the most harrowing. In that moment, it seemed as if the entity harbored intentions of carrying out some nefarious act. Though I can't explain how, I somehow sensed its malevolence. Reacting swiftly, I reached behind me and retrieved a bottle of holy water. Flipping open the spout, holding the vessel in front of me, I braced myself for the entity's charge. But before I could release the blessed water upon it, the entity vanished without a trace, never to return, or so I thought. Later in 2005, a friend accompanied by his girlfriend visited me at my home. Initially, their visits had been pleasant and kind of uneventful, but during one particular visit, his girlfriend confessed to feeling an unexplainable unease and fear. To investigate further, I requested my friend to take some photographs of my room using his cell phone camera. To our astonishment, one of the pictures revealed a shadowy figure crouching in one corner. Sensing a growing sense of urgency, I armed myself with the holy water once again and proceeded to bless every entranceway, window, wall, closet, reciting the sign of the cross fervently on both sides of each surface. The house was plunged into darkness, with only the faint glow from my bedroom lamp and television providing any illumination. As I traversed the hallway, a bone-chilling sensation crept up from behind, a ghostly hand snaking its way beneath my neck and hoisting me off the ground, as if by an unseen force. With a jarring impact, I was flung against the hallway closet door. Summoning every ounce of courage, I raised my right hand to make the sign of the cross, at which point I was abruptly released, dropping to the floor as if discarded. As I retreated back into my bedroom where my friend and his girlfriend anxiously awaited, an overwhelming heaviness and coldness pervaded the house. Swiftly, I administered the sign of the cross on our foreheads, and miraculously, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, giving way to a radiant warmth. A flood of light and an overwhelming sense of peace, love, and joy that suffused every corner of the house. In conclusion, these are the extraordinary experiences I've had throughout my life. While they have not been consistent, each encounter has left an indelible mark on my soul. From the voice of the Holy Spirit resonating through the radio during my childhood, to the visitations of my guardian angel Gabriel, I have been touched by forces beyond comprehension. The warm, ethereal feeling during a school mass, the chilling presence of malevolent entities, and the battles between benevolent and maleficent spirits have all shaped my perception of the supernatural. Through moments of profound fear and awe, I've glimpsed the extraordinary and the divine, forever altering my understanding of the world around me. Story number 10. Ask Reddit. Let me tell you a fascinating story that was recounted to me by a fellow airman that I had the privilege of working with during my time in the Air Force. It was back in 2003 when I was stationed in Osan, AB in South Korea. This airman, whom I'll refer to as John, shared an eerie experience that occurred during his first duty station in Germany, nearly a decade before our conversation. The tale unfolded in a small basement apartment where John and another airman found themselves as roommates, residing just off the base. One fateful night, as John peacefully slumbered in his tiny room, he suddenly found himself jolted awake. To his astonishment, a mysterious figure shrouded in darkness stood ominously in front of his window. With a rush of adrenaline, John's senses heightened, and in an instant, the figure vanished into thin air. Curiously, what perplexed him even more was the fact that his bed was positioned right up against the window, leaving no space for a person to stand. Initially, he dismissed the encounter as a mere product of his dreams, but the experience had rattled him all the way to the core, rendering him unable to fall back asleep. Frustrated after hours of tossing and turning, John surrendered to the wakefulness and decided to rise from his restless bed. To his surprise, the following night brought forth a similar occurrence. John's eyes fluttered open, and there before him stood the enigmatic shadowy figure once again. Determined to uncover the truth behind these strange encounters, John mustered the courage to confront his roommate the next day. With trepidation, he inquired whether his companion had entered his room the previous night, specifically around the bewitching hour of 3 a.m. Much to his chagrin, his roommate responded with a resounding no, accompanied by a dose of ridicule that stung his already troubled psyche. Nights turned into weeks, and every evening like clockwork the dark specter materialized at 3 a.m. John grew accustomed to the presence, albeit begrudgingly. Each time the figure manifested, he strained to focus his attention upon it, yet it always vanished, leaving him perplexed and yearning for answers. Aware that sleep was a futile pursuit, John resigned himself to the fact that he would be sleepless into the early hours of the morning. Around 3:15 a.m., he would resign himself to his sleepless fate, brewing a pot of coffee to invigorate his wary mind and passing the hours by engrossing himself in the glow of a television screen until it was time to report for duty. Then, one fateful morning, as John went about his usual routine, his life took a chilling turn. He found himself seated comfortably on the couch, clutching his steaming cup of coffee, when suddenly out of nowhere, a blazing fireball erupted from the stove responsible for heating the apartment. The fiery projectile swiftly ignited a dried-up houseplant, which happened to be situated only a few feet away. Reacting swiftly, fueled by adrenaline and a heightened sense of urgency, John sprang into action. He swiftly rose from the couch, snatching the blazing plant, and hurled it into the safety of the bathtub, extinguishing the flames that threatened to consume their house. In a bewildered state, John realized that from that moment onward, the dark, shadowy figure that had haunted his nights seemed to vanish as abruptly as the flames had been so valiantly quelled. The inexplicable encounters ceased, leaving John both relieved and perplexed. While the mysterious shadow never reappeared, John couldn't help but wonder about the connection between the ethereal figure and the fiery ordeal that had unfolded before him. To this day, the story lingers in my mind as a testament to the enigmatic and often unexplainable phenomenon that exists within our world. John's experience serves as a reminder that sometimes the answers we seek lie hidden in the realm of the inexplicable, waiting to be discovered through unexpected twists of fate and inexplicable events. Story number 11. Ask Reddit 2. I have a story to share, a bone-chilling experience that unfolded in an orphanage, a place where my own childhood memories were etched. Situated in the heart of Goldburn, there stood an abandoned orphanage that had become an emblem of mystery and curiosity. Many dared to venture inside its dilapidated walls, considering it a rite of passage, a test of courage. However, fate had a different plan for this place, as it was ravaged by fires, leaving its structural integrity in question. The once daring escapades had come to a halt. Nevertheless, the allure of the abandoned building persisted, and I found myself accompanied by some close friends on an evening that would be forever etched into my mind. These friends, seasoned explorers of the orphanage, reassured me that it was a mere venture into a cool abandoned structure, devoid of any paranormal presence or imminent danger. They promised that we wouldn't get caught, and their confidence eased my initial trepidation. As we entered the orphanage, I couldn't help but notice that the entrance was unusually open and unlocked, just as my friends had expected. With a sense of adventure and a hint of apprehension, we began our exploration, marveling at the remnants of a forgotten past. However, the atmosphere swiftly transformed into a sudden drop. It was like the whole temperature surrounding us plummeted. It was as if the summer's night right before the commencement of school had been instantaneously replaced by the biting chill of winter. Our breath materialized before us, evident of the supernatural coldness that had gripped the air. Footsteps echoed through the hallways, captivating our attention. Some members of our group had veered off in different directions, so we convinced ourselves that it was merely their presence that we were hearing. Yet to our surprise, they didn't respond when we called out to them. The sound of footsteps persisted, growing closer and seemingly following our every move. With each passing moment, our unease intensified, and a sense of foreboding settled in our hearts. We glanced behind us, inspecting the vacant rooms, but no one was there. The invisible pursuer lurked in the shadows, eluding our desperate attempts to catch a glimpse. To add to our growing anxiety, we heard the unmistakable sound of someone walking on the roof. Although this was a trick our friends would often play, our nerves were now on edge. The boundary between reality and the supernatural seemed blurred, and our minds couldn't dismiss the possibility of a spectral presence. The combination of inexplicable occurrences and eerie sounds began to unnerve us all. Eventually, our courage wavered, and we made the collective decision to leave. I quickly sent a text to our absent friends, informing them of our departure and cautioning them against taking unnecessary risks, especially climbing the roof. We descended the stairs, our hearts pounding in our chests, when suddenly, one of the girls let out an ear-piercing scream and bolted out of the orphanage. Fear had taken hold of her, and she ran all the way home, leaving us bewildered and concerned. Later that night, her frantic mother contacted us, desperate for answers. Her daughter's tearful and incoherent recounting of events left her shaken and confused. Amidst the anguish, we pieced together the fragments of her terrifying encounter. According to her, she had spotted a young boy, a spectral figure, waving at her from a distance. The sheer terror of that encounter had forever scarred her, and she vowed never to return to that forsaken place. Curiously, the friends who had broken off from our group didn't experience anything out of the ordinary during their exploration. They assured us that they hadn't followed us or set foot on the roof until after receiving the text message challenging them to do so. The inexplicable events seemed to have selectively chosen their victims, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and lingering unease. This harrowing experience at the orphanage served as a stark reminder of the thin veil that separates the realm of the living and the dead. It left an indelible mark on my soul, a testament to the existence of forces beyond our comprehension. The abandoned orphanage, once a symbol of adventure, had become a haunting reminder of the unknown, and a price we pay for delving too deep into mysteries that lie hidden within the shadows. Story number 12. Ask Reddit 3. I used to live in this enchanting old farmstead house, a rustic abode that had stood the test of time for about 150 years. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, it was a serene oasis, surrounded by sprawling fields and rolling hills. The closest neighboring house belonged to my parents, a few hundred yards away, providing a sense of comfort and familiarity. One day as I returned home during the middle of a bright afternoon, an eerie phenomenon greeted me. My stereo, which also served as my trusty surround sound system, emitted a disconcerting static noise from its speakers. At the time, I didn't pay much attention, merely dismissing it as a fleeting peculiarity. Weeks passed, and the incident had long escaped my memory. Then one fateful night, the tranquility of my slumber was abruptly shattered. Startled awake at 3 a.m., my heart pounding within my chest, I found myself in a state of high alert, a primal instinct urging me to either flee or confront an unknown threat. As my mind attempted to make sense of the adrenaline coursing through my veins, I suddenly became aware that the stereo was once again blaring a cacophony of static. Only this time, it was amplified to its maximum volume, a deafening roar that reverberated through the small confines of my beloved dwelling. Such an ear-splitting level of sound was utterly foreign to me, as I had never dared to subject myself to such a sensory assault within the cozy walls of my humble home. Filled with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, I embarked on a thorough investigation, methodically scouring every nook and cranny of the house. Alas, no intruder was found, no hidden presence lurking within the shadows. As I finally managed to silence the stereo and bring an end to the disconcerting symphony, I decided to commence my daily routine prematurely, seeking solace in the familiarity of my workplace, longing to escape the inexplicable phenomenon that had shaken me to my core. What perplexed me the most was the naturalness, I guess you'd call it that, of this bizarre occurrence. You see, the stereo itself wasn't an enigma, for it required manual operation, necessitating the physical act of pressing buttons to switch between different settings. The remote control had vanished into the annals of time long before these strange events unfolded, and yet to my bewilderment, the setting on the stereo had been tampered with, altering from the auxiliary input to the cassette player, then to the CD player, and eventually settling on the radio, continuously changing stations. As if that wasn't bewildering enough, the volume knob had been twisted mercilessly to the right, unleashing a torrent of sound that threatened to shatter the tranquility of my humble dwelling. The unnerving thought of an unseen hand manipulating the stereo haunted my every waking moment. However, this unsettling incident was not an isolated occurrence in the tapestry of my experiences with this ancient farmhouse. On another memorable night, while engrossed in watching movies at my computer, I suddenly struck by an inexplicable presence. In the periphery of my vision, I caught sight of what appeared to be my son, standing silently beside me, seemingly curious about my activities. Naturally, my initial response was to acknowledge him and engage in conversation. Yet, as I turned to face him, the realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. My son was spending the weekend with his mother, far away from the confines of our shared home. The shock of this revelation sent shivers cascading down my spine, leaving me unnerved and questioning the very fabric of reality. It's essential to note that the house I occupied was nestled within a short distance of centuries-old cemeteries dedicated to children and infants. Its weathered tombstones bore witness to the countless souls who had departed this earthly realm far too soon. An undeniable connection began to form within my mind, linking these inexplicable occurrences to the somber energy emanating from the hallowed ground. The supernatural forces that seemed to pervade my home appeared to be tethered to the restless spirits of those who had long departed. The enigmatic incidents persisted, casting a shadow of unease over my daily existence. However, fate had a peculiar way of interceding in my life. As if guided by a cosmic hand, I found myself welcoming a furry companion into my humble abode, a mischievous feline companion who would become my steadfast confidant. Remarkably, the moment my new feline friend crossed the threshold of my home, the malevolent phenomena that had plagued my nights and unsettled my days came to an abrupt halt. The inexplicable sounds, the eerie visions, and the chilling sensations dissipated into the ether, leaving behind a newfound tranquility that had long eluded me. Eventually, life took me on a different path, leading me away from that timeless farmhouse and into the bustling center of a town. I bid farewell to the creaking floorboards and the whispers of the wind that had accompanied me during my time in that historic dwelling. Now, the walls of my new abode are adorned with a sense of modernity, free from the weight of supernatural mysteries that had once plagued my existence. Reflecting back on those inexplicable incidents, I'm left with a profound appreciation for the unseen forces that shape our lives. The ethereal veil that separates the mortal realm from the realm of spirits can at times grow thin, allowing glimpses into the enigmatic beyond. While the mysteries of that old farmhouse may forever remain unsolved, I carry with me the memories, the thrills, and the lessons learned within its ancient walls, forever grateful for the unforeseen journey it bestowed upon me. Story number 13, Ask Reddit 4. During my days as a security guard, I had the daunting task of patrolling a boat manufacturing factory throughout the night. It was a grueling routine, 4 times a night from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., navigating through 2 massive buildings and a sprawling courtyard. For some inexplicable reason, the place always sent shivers down my spine. You weren't allowed to turn on the lights, but fortunately, the main factory had emergency lighting that illuminated the area quite well. The second building, where they painted the boats, was a different story altogether. It lacked any form of lighting, forcing me to rely on a feeble flashlight to navigate through the maze of boats and debris just to reach the back door. To make matters worse, the building had a persistent leak resulting in a constant drip-drip of water. and a pervasive smell of heavy fumes hung in the air. One particular night, during my final patrol around 3 a.m., my nerves were already on edge from the 3 previous visits. I can't recall precisely what had happened during those rounds. It was likely just eerie noises echoing through the factory. As I cautiously made my way into the second building, aiming for the back door, an unexpected occurrence sent my heart racing. Suddenly, the PA system crackled to life, flooding the entire building with ear-piercing static. The sheer intensity of the sound startled me so much that I'm convinced I jumped high enough to touch the roof. Without even reaching the back door, I bolted out into the courtyard, only to have a cat unexpectedly pounce on me from one of the boats. In that moment, the feline's sudden appearance managed to divert my attention from the unnerving incident with the speakers, and I burst into laughter, berating myself for being such a scaredy cat of a security guard. Shrugging off the strange encounter, I decided to abandon the rest of my patrol and headed back to the main building, still chuckling to myself about the feline surprise. As I made a quick pit stop at the bathroom, enjoying a brief moment of respite, an unexpected sound filled the air. Faint music emanating from the radio connected to the plant's speakers. Justin Bieber's voice wafted through the air, and I couldn't help but curse underneath my breath. So would I. My sudden burst of panic propelled me out of the bathroom and into the hallway, where, to my disbelief, I distinctly heard a voice saying, "Hello, are you there?" The voice seemed genderless and distorted, enough to assure me it wasn't a potential intruder. Without wasting another second, I sprinted out of the building, reaching my car, and hastily dialed my supervisor's number. When I finally connected with her, all she did was burst into laughter on the other end. Apparently, these occurrences were not uncommon, and some guards outright refused to enter that particular building. She admitted that she hadn't informed me beforehand to spare me the unnecessary fear. There's another incident that comes to mind, the time when I was training a new guard. It was our 4th and final visit together, and nature called, demanding a visit to the restroom. Instructing my trainee to continue the patrol alone and locate all the designated checkpoints, I hurriedly made my way to the facilities. As I emerged from the restroom, I overheard my trainee's voice outside the hallway responding, "Yeah?" And of course. Confused, I approached him and inquired about his actions. He explained that he had heard a voice asking, "Hello, are you here?" and had assumed that it was me calling out to him. I was taken aback, realizing that I had never shared my ghostly encounter with him, making his experience all the more unsettling. In fact, I had encountered inexplicable phenomenon even during my time as a security guard at the hospital, particularly on the top floor of the administration building. Although not in the vicinity of the morgue or any other areas associated with death, strange occurrences still managed to manifest. There were instances where objects appeared to move on their own, defying the laws of physics, leaving me puzzled and questioning the nature of reality itself. All these unnerving incidents have taught me to expect the unexpected and to always remain vigilant, even in seemingly mundane environments. Whether it's the eerie stillness of a boat factory at night, or the mysterious happenings within the walls of a hospital, there are forces beyond our comprehension that may stir and awaken when darkness descends. As for me, I continue to carry those memories with a mix of trepidation and curiosity, wondering what other secrets lie hidden in the shadows of the night. Story number 14. Ask Reddit 5. More than a decade ago, I found myself working as a security guard for a brief period of time. During my tenure, there were 2 stories that left a lasting impression on me, each adding to the mysterious and eerie nature of my job. In one of my assignments, I was working at a hotel consisting of 2 wings with elevators situated at the center. As part of my routine, I would take the elevator to the top floor and commence my patrol towards one of the stairwells located at the end of the wing. After reaching that floor, I would then walk down to the next level and proceed in the opposite end of the stairwell. However, on one particular floor, as I strolled past a specific room, I couldn't help but sense a set of footsteps mimicking my every move, seemingly locked in step behind me. Yet, as I continued past the elevators in the central area, this strange sensation would gradually fade away. It was a perplexing occurrence that left me with more questions than answers. In another intriguing incident, I was assigned a facility that was undergoing expansion and upgrades. As a result, the fenced-off area of the site had been temporarily taken down, necessitating overnight security. My responsibility primarily involved patrolling the premises, but apart from those rounds, I would remain stationed in my vehicle. It was during one such night that I had completed a patrol and settled back into my vehicle. As time passed, a whispering voice abruptly pierced the silence, repeating the words, "Go away, go away, go away." Naturally, this unexpected occurrence sent shivers down my spine, and I instinctively positioned my hand near the ignition, ready to start the vehicle and flee from whatever unseen presence haunted the area. However, as my rationality kicked in, I contemplated the embarrassment and difficulty of explaining my abrupt departure to my supervisor. Despite the fear that gripped me, I decided to stay put, carrying out my patrols diligently and remaining at my designated post for the remainder of the night. During my patrols on various occasions, I would hear faint conversations that appeared to originate from small groups, engaged in ordinary discussions. Intrigued yet bewildered, I utilized a powerful 2 million candle power flashlight that I possessed at the time. Shining it in the direction of those elusive voices, I fervently hoped to uncover the source of these peculiar occurrences. However, to my dismay, nothing out of the ordinary ever came into view. It was as if these voices were mere figments of my imagination, teasing me with their cryptic presence. Furthermore, the words being exchanged remained incomprehensible, leaving me frustrated and mystified. Eventually, the construction work reached completion, rendering our security services unnecessary at the facility. I moved on to other night security assignments, yet the remnants of those enigmatic experiences lingered within me. From time to time, while fulfilling my duties at other locations, I would occasionally hear a plaintive voice whispering, "Why aren't you here? You belong here." The voice seemed to tug at my heartstrings, conveying a sense of longing and belonging. However, as it faded away, becoming a distant memory, it's been a significant amount of time since I last heard it, as I've moved on to different employment opportunities since, leaving behind the enigmatic realm of night security. These tales from my brief stint as a security guard continue to fascinate me, evoking a sense of mystery and intrigue that has stayed with me throughout the years. Each experience, whether it be synchronized footsteps trailing behind me, or the inexplicable whispers in the darkness, adds another layer to the inexplicable nature of the unseen world that intertwines with our everyday reality.